The time is now 6 p.m. We will now call this special public meeting of the Board of Trustees of Humble Independent School District to order. I would ask everybody to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the Texas flag. Mr. Grabowski, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
If you'll please remain standing for a moment of silence. You may be seated. The next item is public comment. The board encourages comments from citizens of the district or from district employees. Anyone wishing to speak, either as an individual or as a representative of a group, may do so following the procedure outlined on the agenda. The board asks that comments pertain to public education issues and be no longer than 3 minutes. Remember that the board may not discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on our agenda for today's meeting. If an issue mentioned is listed on tonight's agenda, the board will defer discussion until the appropriate time during the meeting. In addition, the board has adopted complaint policies that are designed to secure at the lowest administrative level a prompt and equitable resolution of complaints and concerns. Complaints brought by students or their parents, by employees, and by citizens may be heard in accordance with the board policies. Each of these processes provides that if a resolution cannot be achieved administratively, the person may appeal the administrative decision to the board as a properly posted agenda item. Copies of our district policies on public participation in meetings and filing complaints are available on the Humble ISD website. Our first public commenter is Ms. Kristen White, and then if Mr. Nam Ta could come to the front row, please, and be seated in one of the seats up here.
Do I push to start, or how does this work?
It'll start.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. Good evening. My name is Kirsten White. I am an Humble ISD parent and resident of Section 55 of the Summerwood community. I come before you this evening to alert you of the impending board policy violation that is presented by consent item number 2 and propose an alternative recommendation, and to inform you of the indifference towards parental notification and community engagement during this short process. I refer specifically to pages 6 and 7 of tonight's board packet regarding the rezoning recommendation for the upcoming 2025-2026 school year and the 2026-2027 school year. In the interest of time, I won't read it aloud, but I am incorporating it by reference, the recommendation by reference. As it relates to the rezoning effective for 2025-2026, the board packet provides, under most circumstances, attendance boundaries changed a year in advance. However, in this situation, the district learned that 6 classrooms at Summerwood Elementary were going to be available at the start of next school year. Under most circumstances is deceiving and intentionally fails to mention that the 1-year requirement is per board policy. I encourage you to go to Board Policy FC, School Attendance Areas. The superintendent's recommendation shall be made to the board for the first reading at least 1 year prior to the effective date of a change in an attendance area. As I mentioned during the April 15th community meeting and in emails to Dr. Brown, Dr. Terry Perkins, Ms. Christy Erb, and the board's legal counsel, construction timelines do not trump board policy. My alternative recommendations was that for the 2025-2026 school year, sections 55B and 55F are flex zones so that incoming kinder and new students, their parents are able to select the best schools for their child, and they're not prematurely deprived of that opportunity. Alternatively, the entire proposal needs to be effective for the 2026-2027 school year. Knowingly violating board policy exposes the district to further public scrutiny as well as the complaint and grievance process. Let's avoid creating a slippery slope of policy violations and policy circumventions. Indifference towards parental notification and community engagement. The School Attendance Area Committee met April 9th. Parents were notified April 10th of this change. Community input the meeting was on April 15th, and the board approval meeting is this evening, May 6th. For a policy that will impact 375 students, less than 30 days has been afforded parents and community members to review and assess. Let the record reflect, I am not objecting to the eventual rezoning of these areas to Summerwood. However, I do object to the haste in which this process.
Thank you, Ms. White. Is Mr. Tall here? Moving on to item 2, our consent agenda. Mr. Scarfo, may I have a motion?
Yes,
sorry.
You want to?
I got to read it first, sorry. Item 2A, approval of professional services and non-construction services exceeding $50,000 in the aggregate, $25,000 individually. Item 2B, updating the school attendance areas for Summerwood Elementary School and Centennial Elementary School.
Madam President, I move to approve the CH listing of vendors and estimated annual cost for contract awards and renewals for the purchase of goods, professional services, and/or non-construction services that are estimated to exceed $50,000 in the aggregate or $25,000 individually for the 2024-25 fiscal year. Item 2B, I move to update the school attendance areas for Summerwood Elementary School and Centennial Elementary School by A, rezoning incoming kindergarten students residing in Section 55B and 55F and new students who move into Sections 55B and 55F from Centennial Elementary to Summerwood Elementary beginning with the 2025-2026 school year, and B, rezoning students in all elementary grade levels in Sections 55B and 55F from Centennial Elementary to Summerwood Elementary beginning with the 2026-27 school year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam President, I'd like to pull 2B.
Yes, sir. So please reread your motion to approve.
The first 2A?
Yes.
2A, I move to approve the CH listing of vendors and estimated annual cost for contract awards and renewals for the purchase of goods, professional services, and/or non-construction services that are estimated to exceed $50,000 in the aggregate or $25,000 individually for the 2024-25 fiscal year.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Item passes 5, and 2 absent. Mr. Scarfo, can I have a motion for item 2B? Or do we need to just discuss it?
I think you would make a motion and then engage in discussion.
Mr. Scarfo, may I please have a motion?
Yes, Madam President. I move to update the school attendance areas for Summerwood Elementary School and Centennial Elementary School by A, rezoning incoming kindergarten students residing in Sections 55B and 55F and new students who move into Sections 55B and 55F from Centennial Elementary to Summerwood Elementary beginning with the 2025-26 school year, and B, rezoning students in all elementary grade levels in Sections 55B and 55F from Centennial Elementary to Summerwood Elementary beginning with the 26-27 school year.
Second.
Mr. Grabowski seconds. Is there any discussion?
Madam
Mr. Scarfo, you're
Madam President,
recognized.
yes. I'd like us to address the issue that was brought forth because we spent time in the Building and Planning Committee discussing that. And Dr. Brown, would Mr. Perkins want to get up? We did discuss the policy, and maybe if you can clarify that we aren't violating policy. I didn't believe we were.
Violating policy to my fine gentleman down here.
Well, what I mean is,
I absolutely can answer the questions in regards to the.
okay, and that's what I'm really getting to, because I left that meeting feeling, okay, we were doing what we needed to do for many reasons, for the logistical reasons of it and the need, and that we were following our policy. That's.
Yes, sir. As we discussed a couple months ago, the district learned that the 6 classrooms in the front of Summerwood Elementary would be finished for the start of the 25-26 school year. And so we had discussed in board building and planning bringing an option forward to the board that if you wanted to get a jump start on preventing overcrowding at Centennial, then we provided an option that would allow kindergarten to start at Summerwood next year, and it would be getting basically a year head start on from what was the original plan to zone all grades in the 26-27 school year. So when we learned that the classrooms are going to be available, we just felt like part of the district tenets are, if you have a school that's in the midst of overcrowding, because I wouldn't say that Centennial's overcrowded today, but with another incoming group of kindergartners next year and delaying that process a year, it would push core classes outside the main building of Centennial into temporary buildings. And so we just felt like offering the board an option to have kindergarten start at Summerwood would alleviate some of that overcrowding. When we had 6 classrooms that would sit for the entire 25-26 school year vacant, while we had core classes in temporary buildings at Centennial. So if the board wanted that option, we presented it. The option also is to rezone all grade levels for the 26-27 school year.
Ms. Lamont Dixon?
The question I guess I have, if it's coming from building and planning to the full board, typically what we would have is multiple options for us to actually look at in the meeting when we vote. So I guess right now I'm seeing basically one option.
Correct. And that option was discussed in the Bond 2022 committee when it was decided, when PASA basically said Humble ISD does not need another elementary school, but you need additional capacity in the southeast corner of the district upon build out. And so the decision was made by the Bond 2022 committee to move forward with an expansion of Summerwood Elementary with 55B and 55F, eventually moving, I guess what you saw, home to Summerwood Elementary, because they had never been able, Summerwood was built for 750 back in the day, and so Summerwood never had the capacity for 55F and 55B at Summerwood. And so they initially started out at Lakeshore. When we opened Centennial, we moved them to Centennial, and when the committee studied it as part of the bond project, it was decided at that point in time that we would add on, it would be easy to add on some additional classrooms to Summerwood to bring them to 1050, which would then allow us at some point in the future, which now is the future, to add 55B and F, which is about 370 students K through 5. Back into Summerwood. So at the end of the day, 5 years from now, Summerwood and Centennial will both be at about a little less than 1,000 students, resident students apiece.
So basically the 55B and 55F are what we had already planned to do. It just wasn't going to happen this soon, but now you're saying the classrooms are ready, so we can move forward with the original plan.
We could with the kindergarten group, because since the other classrooms on the back side of the building are not going to be through by the start of school for sure. Mm-hmm. We don't want to, that's why we offered to go ahead and start with the kindergarten option, because we know we'll have room for the kindergarten classes coming in.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
Madam President?
Mr. Scarfo?
Yeah. Ms. Brinkley, can you address a policy matter? If you're in position to do that? I don't mean to put you on the spot. Because I felt comfortable that when we discussed it in building planning that we were not.
So I will say, the policy certainly says what it says, and what was read to the board from the podium is the accurate language of policy. Policy is, a creature of the board. It does include an emergency provision as well that allows the board to change attendance areas without following the process. I think in this case, given the circumstances surrounding these classrooms being complete and ready, sort of ahead of schedule, and being able to relieve the overcrowding, along with the fact that administration has gone through all of the other steps, certainly following the spirit of the policy and the purposes behind that process, and has followed that process. I do think the board can, vote on this tonight if they so choose.
Anybody further? All those in favor? Item passes, 5 and 2 absent. Moving on to our information items for tonight, item 3A, Budget Workshop. Billy Beatty will present budget information for the 2025-2026 school year.
All right. Good evening, Board, Dr. Brown. I'm excited to officially kick off the budget workshop season for the 25-26 budget. We had a little bit of a delay getting started, but I'll talk a little bit about that in future slides. But I will present the initial look at the 25-26 budget tonight. So before we get started with the overall budget process, I do want to kind of remind everyone of how we go through the budget and what process we use. We don't add any amount to the budget by default. We always start from scratch. We always start from zero. And all of our budget managers evaluate their budgets and determine if they need additional funding for meeting the needs that they have. That goes through a process where leadership reviews it, and then ultimately that's how we build what we present to you all and recommend to you for the next year budget. We've been doing that. That kicked off a few months ago, and we have what I'm going to provide tonight is the initial review of those those items that are being considered for next year budget. I do want to make a point to say that not everything makes it all the way through the request, but we're still able to fulfill those requests. So as budget managers are reviewing their budget, they may find that they can absorb what they need to do with their existing funding. So everything, there is a pretty significant review with budget managers to make sure if they do have some existing budget, then maybe they can just utilize that for their needs. And then also, we do a 15% carry forward every year, and so campuses and departments have built up a little bit of a savings account all on their own that they can leverage and utilize at times for budget requests too. So just because we're going through maybe potentially a limited, new budget additions, it doesn't mean that we didn't tackle a lot of things through this original first part of the budget process. So kind of getting back to the delay on the first budget workshop, it is a legislative session, and we pushed back a little bit for the first workshop to allow a little bit of time to pass with the legislative session, so potentially we could have a little bit more clarity and see if some school finance bills had made their way through both chambers and to the governor. We are on track to meet again for the second workshop in a couple weeks on May 20th. So tonight I'm going to provide a a high-level summary of what we're working on right now, but we're still working. And so in a couple weeks, we'll come back and provide more detail and build upon what we discussed tonight. And then ultimately, we have to provide a budget to you and adopt a budget before June 30th. Tentatively, we have June 17th on the calendar for a budget hearing and adoption, but we could go closer to June 30th if we need to. So just kind of giving an overview of just timing for the budget process this year. So what do we know right now as far as legislation? We know that vouchers, school choice passed and was signed into law. That happened this past weekend. And the major school finance legislation that we're tracking has made it out of the House, HB 2, and is with the Senate right now, awaiting consideration. So right now, as we near and approach next couple weeks needing to recommend a budget to approve, nothing has been set in stone with the legislature. So we're going based off of current law for what we're going to recommend tonight. And so we'll allow the legislative process to complete and see what we get. It could go into special sessions, which would be, into the summer where we've already started our fiscal year. And we are not going to ever budget on hope and wish, hoping for the best. So what we're presenting tonight is based on current law and is not determined by what the legislature does over the next couple weeks. So with potentially no new money from the state, we have been for the past couple years focusing on controlling what we can control and creating efficiencies and cost-saving mechanisms to be able to control our own destiny. And so we've been in that mode for the past couple years. We've been effective with that, and I'll talk a little bit about how effective we've been with that in another slide. But that's what we've been focusing on. And so the capacity that I'm going to talk about that we're recommending for the next year budget is in large part due to these initiatives that we have been working on. And position control or staffing is the biggest part of a school district budget. And so we have been very focused, hyper-focused on position control. Just to put in perspective, staffing, salary and benefits for a district is 87% of the budget. So that's the biggest part of the budget. So we've really put a lot of attention to that. And unique to us, we were growing exponentially, and now we've shut that growth off. So we've had to kind of transition and make sure that we didn't get ahead of ourselves and overhire during that time period. So we've been very methodical and strategic with staffing and hiring. We also have made major initiatives with student attendance. So within the current legislation, we have been leaving a lot of money on the table just because our attendance had never fully recovered from COVID. And so the past couple years, and especially this year, we have made initiatives to improve our student attendance, which in turn generates more funding for us to be able to budget. And then the last year was the first year that we opened up the district boundaries to allow students from outside Humble ISD to apply and attend Humble ISD. So we've added students through the open enrollment and recommend to continue that open enrollment program into the future years so we can budget that capacity that comes along with the additional students. And then one of the kind of maybe overlooked sometimes, we've really looked to everything. And back in the state funding formulas are all determined based off of our PEIMS reports. And we are compiling these reports, submitting them to the state all year round, and that's how the state knows what students the amount of students we have, the services that they receive, the classes they participate in, and all of that goes into the funding formulas, which in turn generate how much money we will receive. So we've done triple check on how all of our coding. Did we set up a new course and accidentally miss the PEIMS coding? Is everything 100% accurate to make sure that we're receiving the appropriate funding for our students? And then we also have an emphasis on procurement. So making sure that we are competitively bidding as many goods and services as we possibly can, especially right now with the past couple of years we've come out of inflation, high inflation environment, and potentially coming into some tariff implications, making sure that we're always looking at fresh pricing and making sure that we're receiving the most cost-effective pricing for our goods and services. And then that 13% non-salary portion of the budget, the biggest driver for that is utilities. So we've been looking at how we can be effective and efficient with our utilities and try to drive some cost savings with utilities there. So all in all, we have been working on this. This is not like a short-term plan. We're always looking at this and trying to be as effective as possible. And this is not a full comprehensive list. We're looking at everything. But these are the major components of why we have available budget to budget this year. Yes?
Mr. Beatty? Yeah, a question. On the open enrollment, right, currently, what are you going to estimate? Because, last year when this idea was brought forward, and the number I thought was awful high at 500. What did we actually, where are we at now? About 100 or so students that we got through that program?
Yep.
Okay.
100 students.
That's a pretty big miss, and that built a lot of projected revenue that didn't happen. And I know we picked it up because of things that were done on the ADA, but in this budget cycle, that's fine that we continue it, but are we going to be more realistic about what we're going to project we might add?
We were expecting up to 500 students. We ended up with 100. This year we're expecting 200. That's what I have in the model. It's difficult to differentiate the specific amount of money that we missed by due to that projection of just the count of kids, because at the end of the day, it's the ADA that drives the funding. So you're right that we although we did miss our target, we still exceeded the ADA overall, so it ended up working out in our favor. But we're only planning for 100 extra students this year.
An additional 100 over?
On top of the 100.
Okay, and that's fine. I could probably get comfortable with that because, earlier in your slide you said we don't budget on hope, and there was a lot of hope in that number last year. And I raised that issue, but it was drowned out. But that's okay, as long as we're being more realistic. That's all I want us to be, is realistic.
Yes.
Quick question about that. I feel like in one of our meetings we've had this year, there was a conversation about the way we market that as well. And I don't know if I know that's really Jamie's area, but if you could speak to a little bit on that, because I think if we are marketing the fact that we offer open enrollment on a grander scale, that'll give us an opportunity to have more students.
Correct. So Jamie can come up, and I'll kind of, while Jamie's walking up, I'll kind of, we want to maximize our operational efficiency, so where we have open seats, to be able to, those would be the opportunities for the open enrollment. And so it's kind of striking the balance of making sure that as we learn that we have seats that we can fill, making sure we don't, just making sure that we don't have to put a temporary building at one of those campuses after it all, but that kind of goes into the marketing model.
We're in a better position this year with regards to marketing efforts, because last year it was late, potentially even May, when it was approved, and so we didn't have any marketing in place because we weren't quite sure what was going to be approved, but now we know how the program's going to work, so we already have those, what we call, marketing assets built, and we are launching them, this month. So the marketing efforts will begin earlier in the year than they did last year. We were still marketing like in July, which is not ideal.
Thank you. And speaking to that, I guess the only high school is the only high school where we have space, Kingwood High School
Cape Park, right?
and K Park? Okay, thank you.
And we're always looking at those available seats, because when Foster Elementary is completed, then we may have significantly more elementary seats open up after that as well. But Jamie's team does a great job of helping with that marketing, get that word out. So I do want to kind of put some perspective into, I said a lot of things about how we have been able to make things work for the past few years. The last major school finance overall formula funding changes were House Bill 3, and that passed back in 2019. And so since that point in time, funding formula change has only generated an additional $2.3 million for Humble ISD since that. But if you put into perspective everything that we've added, the expenditures that we've added to the budget since then, it's a little over $100 million. So we've really had to figure out how to make things work. And growth helped us for quite a bit. So, the growth provided more funding for us, but the growth hasn't been there for the past couple years. And so we've had to really pivot, change, and adapt to our new, just trying to keep up with growth and trying to, making sure that we didn't hire and over budget. And so I put the slide there just to, we've talked about how school finance has been in a tough spot. This is kind of a little bit of a perspective of what we've had to work through. And the growth associated with new students, I don't put that revenue here, but the actual funding formulas what changes have generated additional funding on the funding formulas, it's very low, so 2.3. We've been working under the same formula for quite a bit of time, and a lot has changed. So we've had a high inflationary environment. We are experiencing, since this House Bill 3, upwards of 20%, just higher costs just due to inflation. And we did have ESSER funding, which was a great help during that time, but ESSER doesn't help your recurring budget if you use ESSER funds appropriately. That's one-time money. We used it for one-time purposes to address issues within the pandemic. So that didn't support us to a very significant degree with our recurring budget needs. You wouldn't put salary increases on ESSER funding. So I just highlight that we have been working on this. We've been doing a good job with it, and we plan to continue to work on getting efficient and building that capacity within our budget. So overall, what is in the recurring budget right now? What are some of those initiatives? As far as compensation goes, at this time, this is still early. We're still evaluating and working through things. But at this time, we are recommending a 3% overall general increase. We will provide more detail on that as we meet on May 20th. And at that time, we'll try to provide where we believe that 3% puts us in comparison to our peers in the other districts, to make sure that we're staying competitive. And we'll also kind of give the detailed look of what that 3% means for the teacher step schedule and our expectation for retention and things like that. The 1% in the last budget that went to recurring salary wasn't what anyone hoped to provide. So compensation was one of the primary focuses for when we're building this budget. On top of the 3% overall general increase for everyone, we are looking at a number of salary studies where we review if jobs are competitive against our peers, and if any of those jobs that look like they're falling below market, then we would likely recommend an additional equity adjustment on top of the 3% to lift those jobs so we can be competitive in those areas amongst our peers. And overall healthcare costs are always rising, and we're recommending a employer increase to support the funding and premiums for our health plan, and then a small employee premium increase. We, just as a reminder, we opted out of TRS Active Care many years ago, and we offer a very valuable plan to employees, and the plan is significantly cheaper than Active Care, and there's not a district around that offers premiums and a rich plan like we do at the premiums we charge. And when the employee premium increase side, we just talked about the 3% increase. We don't want to take away all that 3% on a premium increase. So this is just a perspective of what we're considering with the employee premium increase is $10 a paycheck for employee only. That's the tier of the health plan that has the most significant amount of employees participating in. And then the highest cost premiums are the employee family tier, and recommending or considering potentially a $25 per paycheck premium increase. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Could you, if I'm right, we compare ourselves to Katie quite a bit, and I believe that Katie is somewhere for the employee and the family in the $1,400 a month range, and we're in about $1,050 to $1,100. That to give some numbers to just how good our plan is compared to.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we compare ourselves to everyone, making sure that we are being competitive as possible with salaries and benefits, because benefits oftentimes are overlooked, but provide a very, very significant, you have more take-home pay if you're paying a lot less in health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket health care costs when you actually go to the doctor. And actually on the next slide, this is current year, the comparison and the numbers we looked at. TRS Active Care districts, employee-only plan, we have been charging $50 a month this current year, and the average TRS Active Care district employees were paying $203 a month for that. So very, very significant. Even with our minor, small premium increases, it's still significantly cheaper than our peers. Yes.
Mr. Beatty, if you can go back one slide. Just to be clear, as you said early at the start of your presentation, this is based on current law.
Yes.
So that 3% we're looking at, that's a floor for us. So if and that's based on the current allotment, the student allotment, let's just use that one. There's other allotments, I get that. But the 6160. But if we get that additional money, we're hoping, and I would believe we'd all be wanting to do that we're looking at maybe a 4% overall increase for employees. And then could you just explain, as you went through the medical, how much we spent out of reserves to fund the plan just the last 2 years? Because I want people to understand that, okay, there may be an increase this year. There weren't, I don't believe, the last two. But the district put in a lot of money in terms of the employer share, because off the top of my head, I can't remember what the deficit we ran for last year, and this year was approaching 4 million. Anyway, if you can, because I'd like people to understand that we're chomping in a lot of money for that. And it's great that we are, but at some point, you can't be taking everything out of your savings account.
As far as the health plan is concerned, we have contributed a significant amount, and I'll talk a little bit about fund balance on a future slide, but this fiscal year, we have contributed $18 million to support the health plan. We are trying to solve healthcare, and we're trying to lever. We're below benchmark on all of our categories, so we are doing well with our claims, and so the premium increase is a small step towards helping support the overall funding, but we're also looking at ways so we can continue to maintain the most affordable plan in town and still provide the greatest service. So we're looking at every option within the health plan to make sure that we continue to do the best we can with costs, whether it's PBM, pharmacy benefit manager changes. We're looking at everything to make sure that we're not just raising premiums, trying to lower costs as well, so that whenever the fund balance supports the claims, it helps give us a little bit of time to implement new changes to increase funding within the plan, rather than having to rely on supplemental support. And you mentioned increase 3%. Yes, this is all current law. And we're evaluating everything right now. One of the stipulations with House Bill 2, that major school finance bill that I mentioned earlier, is that you must contribute a percentage of the new money you receive to increasing teachers' salaries. So we need to, if that passes, we need to make sure that we meet that requirement no matter what. So we'll keep looking at this 3%, but I'll also add that whatever the state approves, that's all the money we get for 2 years. So we also are trying to plan ahead and make sure that it's not just a 1 year where we provide raises, but we can make sure that employees feel confident that we can provide raises the second year when we don't get any new money. So we're kind of balancing all that and continuing to evaluate that.
The one House was looking at changing that 30% to 40%.
That's right.
So that's a big difference there too. So, okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, and so we do have staffing, increase in staffing recommendation. Even though our overall student population isn't growing, we are opening a new middle school this year. And so although a lot of the staff that will work at the new middle school will come from other middle schools, they'll transfer over, we still need core positions to operate that building. So principals and nurse, custodians, we have a core group that we will need no matter what. So we are including new staffing for Lake Houston Middle School. And then, although the overall students aren't growing, we are growing in special education. So we are recommending new positions to be able to support the special education students and serve, provide those students with the services they need. So as far as it goes for recurring budget initiatives that are not salary related or staffing, we are trying to provide investment in our cybersecurity to make sure that we're doing the best we can to protect our network and our data. So we are recommending adding to the recurring budget of technology services to fund a 24/7 It monitors our entire network traffic always to ensure that nothing is getting through and we are protecting our network at all times. And then we had provided a pretty significant investment in our cameras through the district. So that investment required more servers in our data center. So there's additional power consumption and space requirements at that data center. So this allows technology to be able to fund that increase that we'll have on the data center side. We also, a few years back, started paying student teachers, which hadn't been done before. And that was the trend at the time and allowed us to stay competitive and incentivize those student teachers to come student teach at Humble ISD. We didn't realize at the time, because this is our first year of doing it, how significant of a budget requirement that would be. But over the past couple years, we've landed and figured that out. And so we're recommending to fully fund that program. I will say this is a very beneficial program for us because of the student teachers that we have hired every year. We end up hiring about a third of them into full-time positions with us. So it's a very effective way to maintain our hiring and eliminate vacancies. We're also, okay, so overall, with the new middle school, we need to fund fine arts program at Lake Houston Middle School. And then overall for fine arts district-wide, we need to provide some additional resources for supplies for that fine arts program. And as our instruments and equipment age, we need to add a little bit of funding for them to be able to repair the equipment and the instruments that they have. And always a priority, safety and security. So as our police department grows, making sure that we're providing the funding for that, the police force to get what they need done. And large part of that for the safety side are the annual inspections for fire inspections and things like that, that make sure that we're following those inspections, maintaining our permits. And one other thing we did for safety is we background checked all of our volunteers. And so as our volunteers have increased, that cost associated with that has increased. So providing funding to be able to continue that background check program. And then as far as, yes?
Going back to the student teachers, okay? How much did that, what's the estimate for this year, the total cost will be?
I believe that it will end up being somewhere around $750,000.
Okay.
And we originally, I believe we did $300,000 in our initial budget when we created the program. And so the additional funding, we're trying to reallocate some existing budget to repurpose to that, and then the new money in the recurring budget.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that part of it. I just want to have an idea. So it's just that if we're only turning 33%, that doesn't really excite me that much. And I just wondered how we thought about maybe if you sort of cut the current pay in half with a sign-on bonus for the other part as sort of a carrot out there, because it seems like we're training 66% to go someplace else in a sense. I don't know. I mean, just something maybe to think about.
I will tell you that
it's not a huge number, but still.
It didn't excite me. Well, any budget increase doesn't excite me.
But I don't mind if we're getting a return on the investment. I think that's kind of a low return. That's all I'm saying.
We are looking at it, and Rick and I met with HR, and there's a balance we're trying to manage, because if we don't, if we become very restrictive on who and how and when we accept the student teachers, then we may not get student teachers. So what we landed at is we could expand it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of maintain exactly what we are in this recommendation, and that would maintain exactly, like, we would still get student teachers to come to Humble ISD. We may risk not, if we go too far on cuts, we may not get any student
I understand,
teachers.
and really and truly, maybe those are the only ones you want. I mean, there may be 60% that you
That's-
don't want to hire, and that's okay. You know, you made an investment, you tried, you looked, and you said, well, you know what? See you, thank you very much. And that's part of the calculation too, I get that. So.
Yep. Okay, so we talked a little bit about fund balance. We have a strong fund balance. As we review the budget requests, a number of the requests are more one-time in nature. So rather than adding to the recurring budget, we recommend that we utilize our assigned fund balance to move forward with some of those initiatives. So some of those one-times that are being considered at this moment, outdated old fine arts uniforms. Some are, so if they're 10 years or older, then replacing those uniforms. And fine arts reviews that life cycle of those uniforms and manages that process. And then as our fine arts programs grow, making sure that we're providing the supplies and equipment for the fine arts program. So one of the needs that they have is kilns at elementary school, at elementary campuses. And then our police department is going to create a new police academy. And so we have some new expenses that we need to fund for that to enable that academy to start off. And then overall, there are some resources and equipment that the police department needs to make sure that they have what they need to do their jobs. And one thing that comes up a lot at the campuses is that we have maybe furniture needs or maybe a minor building remodeling need that comes up from time to time, and it may not really reach the level of bond dollar funding, but we need to still provide that. And so this year we're recommending that we assign some fund balance so that as those needs come up, they can route up through to our assistant soups. They can review those requests and then provide the funding to meet those needs. And then we're recommending to continue the non-House Bill 3 staff stipend. This has been, that we've provided this stipend ever since House Bill 3. We had one for the non-teaching staff, and we had a stipend for the teachers. The teachers we rolled into base pay, so they received that stipend in base pay. And this was going back to making sure that we met the requirement of the percentage that we needed to increase compensation with the new money we received from House Bill 3. We've always continued the non-teaching staff stipend throughout the years, and we're recommending continuing it because it's a significant factor for staff. And if we got rid of it now, that would be like a $1,000 pay cut. This is a $500 stipend in December and a $500 stipend in May. So we're recommending continuing that into next year. And so overall, the math, the numbers, I said, this is the potential capacity that we have available to budget. We do need to account for fast growth. We are continuing to fall out of fast growth as we don't grow and other districts do grow. We watch that very closely, how we compare to some of those districts in the same fast growth tier as us, but I do feel like we're gonna fall and lose a little bit more funding this year. So we're taking that into consideration. And something important that I'd like to bring attention to is that a few years back when we didn't know that we weren't growing any longer, you all approved a budget that included staffing for 49,500 students. we haven't reached that, and we did not overhire during that time. We were, like I said, we were very strategic with that hiring, and it's not as easy to say, okay, 1,000 kids, we don't need this amount of positions, because the student needs are always different, and it's not always as easy as just saying one teacher per this many students. But we haven't hired those positions. We know we're not growing any longer because the PASA report provide that information, and we've been holding those, in contingency. So at this time, we'd recommend eliminating those positions, they're vacant positions that we haven't needed for the past couple years, and repurpose those dollars into the recurring budget. Did you have a question, Mr. Scarfo?
Just going to say, sir, have you already built that into potential capacity?
I didn't factor
Okay,
that.
and that's
I
fine
wanted
if you
that to
haven't.
be separate.
That's good.
because
Okay, that's a.
It helps us keep those positions, and if whether we repurpose those into Lake Houston Middle School positions, it was easier for us to make sure we didn't need those positions. Going back to that, it's difficult to say per student how many staff we need. And I wanted to make sure y'all knew that we didn't overhire and that we've been holding those. Okay, and then so the numbers for what we talked about tonight in the recurring budget, Lake Houston Middle School, the 3% and equity, the employer side of the health plan contribution, and then the overall recurring budget requests that we're considering at the moment, and the additional special education staff. Revenue and expenses, we're looking at a balanced budget, leaving a little bit of a capacity there. And just remember, like we talked about a little bit earlier, this is not including what any pending legislation could bring. So we would be prepared to be able to have budget capacity for the second year of the biennium as well if something came through later on through the legislative process. And then going back to what our assigned fund balance looks like, and just a reminder, assigned fund balance, by policy, we hold 25% of our annual expenditures to the side in unassigned fund balance, and that's our funds that make sure that we can always be solvent and pay the bills, make payroll. So this is the assigned fund balance is above and beyond that 25%. So right now, I project that we'll be at about $55 million at year end, fiscal year end this year. And so if we did apply, or we allocated the $4.8 million of one-time initiatives to assigned fund balance, we'd still be in a healthy assigned fund balance for all of the other things, fiscal contingency, health plan claims, emergency preparedness. We'd still have $50 million to assign to those assignments. So overall, this is an early look. You all adopt the budget by function. And so just to kind of get a feel for what that looks like at the moment, we have about $537 million operating budget revenue, and then about $537 million of total expenditures. And this is just a look at the by function category of the budget that you would ultimately adopt the budget by. And then real quick, it's also early with property tax, but I do want to inform everyone that we received our first certified estimate from HCAD a few weeks ago, and it looks like our taxable value will increase about 3%, 3.15%. And it's early because there's some pending legislation for property tax as well, so this could change drastically, but at this moment, this is what it looks like as far as the property tax side. And since we're talking property tax, just a reminder that property tax doesn't, the state funding formulas is what drives how much money we will receive every year. And based off our property values, we levy a tax rate so that we can collect what we can collect based off of our property values. And if we can't collect what the state says we should have to operate, then the state comes in and provides that extra amount. And if you're one of those very property wealthy districts, and you're able to collect everything the state says you have, that you are set to operate, that's called recapture. And so those districts have to give back that excess local property tax to the state, which in turn gives that to less property wealthy districts. So just a reminder on how property taxes work. We collect what we can from our taxable value, but the state makes up that difference. And just to kind of get a feel for like the overall change from year to year from property tax taxable value, you can really see where recent property tax legislation has played a factor here. 12%, almost a 12% increase in 2023 from the prior year, down to 2.84 2024, and then right now we're standing at 3%. But keep in mind that if the state passes any new property tax legislation, this could change. So next meeting, I'll prepare and bring forward a projected tax rate, but with these numbers, it looks like it'll be a flat tax rate at this time. So we'll bring that forward to review at the next workshop. And that's it. Next time, when we meet in a couple weeks, we'll bring that near final on those recurring and one-time recommendations, and then we'll go into a lot more detail on compensation and salary studies. And that's where we'll talk about how we compare to our peers and look at the teacher step schedule and all of that. And then also, I'll bring forward the child nutrition budget and debt service budget and estimated tax rate at that time too. So with that, any questions? Yes, Mr. Grabowski.
Yeah, I think employees tend to focus on their paycheck. Can you explain under benefits and the compensation package quickly, not without getting too detailed, next level, and should you need a referral, and the use of generics, and what you've successfully negotiated for the district?
So when I say out-of-pocket costs, we have low premiums. Out-of-pocket costs can be totally free, potentially, as well. So we have worked hard to deliver that for our staff and employees and their families. If you go to next level urgent care and you're on the primary plan, it won't cost you anything. And if you go to next level, and let's say you need imaging or something like, and this is not in an emergency situation. I mean, an emergency situation, you need to go to, get that services right away. But if you needed an MRI, advanced imaging, based off of your visit at Next Level, then we have a program in place called Patient's Choice that they'll reach out to you based off of that referral from Next Level and schedule that image for you, and it'll be totally free. So no out-of-pocket cost to the employee. And let's say that you, after that MRI, that imaging, it's determined that you may need an outpatient surgery. That outpatient surgery, Patient's Choice would reach back out to the employee, and they have the choice to go wherever they want, but if they want to utilize Patient's Choice to help schedule that procedure, then that would be totally free as well. So we have worked hard. We need to continue to try to get make sure the employees know that so they can utilize those services. Yes.
Mr. Beatty, when you say free, you mean the employee has no out-of-pocket?
That's correct.
It's not a copay?
Free to the employee.
Okay. Just so everybody understands that we're paying for that.
We are paying for that, but we have
and we're there for
negotiated
them.
those rates through that program at a discount to where it makes more sense for us to cover that completely. Yes.
And the use of generics?
Use of generics. So if you were prescribed at Next Level prescriptions, and there were generics available, and you are okay with taking the generic, which is just as effective as the brand, that would be totally free as well. So you could go for a pretty significant visit at next level and not have to ever pay anything.
Thank you.
Anybody further? Ms. Lamont Dixon?
I just wanted to, I think I know this is correct. So you're also presenting tonight, Rick, or no? No, okay. You'll be on the 20th. What, could you kind of expand on the student-teacher program a little bit more? Is that okay? And the reason I also want you to do that, I know in committee, you talked about other school districts, and other districts also pay their student teachers. So we have to be competitive in that space as well. So if you just, could touch on that and some of the things that you shared with us in committee.
So I've mentioned to the board how, 24-25 was a very successful year, 99% fill rate by the time school started. And part of that success had to do with our increase into the bench strength, grow your own. And student teacher is one of those components. There's 2 or 3 of those components. So 33% may not sound robust, but by the time we onboard a student teacher, we don't know what vacancies are still yet to come. By the time they finish their student teaching, there might not be an opening for them to move into. So we have this strong partnership with the universities and Humble ISD that we want to continue to maintain. Now, I will say also that other 66% of student teachers, some of them become subs because they don't want to leave Humble ISD. So they wait for those openings to occur, and when they do, they are one of the stronger candidates that can fill those types of positions. So the other thing I'll say about the student-teacher concept is that we pay about $100 a day. Other districts are paying a lot more. So this is a valuable program, and I know you all can see that as well. But there needs to be some context here with regards to this is not the only program that helped us get to 99% fill rate. And our hope is by 25, 26, I can say to you again that we're at a 99% fill rate by the time school starts. So I just wanted to add that bit of commentary to the conversation. It's very competitive out there. I'll say that as well, as I mentioned in the Finance Committee, and we're doing everything that we can with regards to trying to thread the needle and strike the balance of still remaining competitive out there, while at the same time, we're still kind of in a state of flux with regards to seeing what others are going to be doing, what the legislature is going to be doing. And so by the time we get to the May 20th board meeting, I hope to provide you with some information with regards to where we are and where we'll be headed.
Thank you.
Anyone further? Thank you, Mr. Beatty. The time is now 7:07 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.